November 1989. I want to start off with an Icelandic anecdote because I was in Iceland in the Air Force in November of 1989. And let's see. There was one night when some friends and I had the night off, so we were hanging out, doing what people do in Iceland, which is drink, although I'm not a drinker. I assume we spent some time at the NCO club, maybe throwing some darts or playing pool. But at one point, we went out and there was a field. I want to say it was a baseball field, but I'm not sure if that's the case. There was a field on the base, Little Rockville, that we went out to. It was the middle of the night, and even though it was chilly, so I don't think this happened in November because the place wasn't covered in snow. But we just laid out on this field and watched the northern lights, the Aurora Borealis. And it was the most amazing light show I have ever seen. The entire sky was just filled with shifting waves of colored light. Must have laid there for at least half an hour and just watched these lights. There was a little, philosophical discussion and things going on. We were talking a little bit, but mainly just focused on this amazing light show. I've never seen anything like it. It was just incredible. Then that's all I've got for anecdotes. Short and sweet. Just something I did one time when I was out in Iceland. Got some other things I'll share with you in later videos. Let's get into the books that I read in November of 1989. It's a pretty long list. It takes up most of the page in my little notebook here. So we'll get into it. First off, we have Time Flies by Bill Cosby. Comedy stuff, comedy essays. The less said about Bill Cosby, the better. So we'll just move on. So book number 2 was The Burglar Who Studied Spinoza by Lawrence Block. This is another Bernie Rodenbar story. Bernie's a burglar who owns a bookstore. And in this one, you see me cheating, looking at my notes. He robs a place that gets robbed 3 times in the same night. Like it's robbed before he goes, then he robs it, then someone else comes along and robs it. Unfortunately, the third person to come along murders one of the people that lives there. And of course, these books have the same sort of setup. All the Bernie Rodenbar books seem to have the same sort of setup. Bernie gets blamed for the murder. So he's got to find the real killer. They're still fun books to read. Lawrence Block, great author. Next up, 10 Philosophical Mistakes by Mortimer J. Adler. And this is basically, it's all there in the title. It discusses 10 mistakes that people make when they're talking about philosophy and how these mistakes are made, the consequences they can lead to, how to avoid these mistakes. I don't remember the specifics, but I'm a fan of philosophy, and this is probably a book I should read again. Going over this list, doing these videos, it's going to make me crazy because I want to reread so much of this stuff. But yeah, 10 Philosophical Mistakes. I would say if you have any interest in philosophy or critical thinking or how to argue well, probably, give this book a look. Next up, For Whom the Bell Tolls by Ernest Hemingway. This is his classic about the Spanish Civil War, I believe it is. I'm going to glance at my notes. I didn't write down... Why didn't I write down the name of the main character? But I believe it's an American who's gone down to Spain to fight in the Spanish Civil War with a group of guerrillas? I don't know. Or he's fighting the guerrillas. I don't know. But anyway, it is a classic. There's a love story. It's Ernest Hemingway. I think I've read more than this one by him. All right, so now we're going to get into some stuff that I have. Lots of stuff by the same people. Now I'm going to read to you what it says on my list, how I wrote these down, because the books I'm going to show you are newer editions and they're slightly different. So first up, and this is book number it's book number 5 that I read in November of 1989. Happens to be book number 4 in the Destroyer series. This is Mafia Fix by Richard Saper and Warren Murphy. And you can see that's different on here. And this is, what is it? Let's see. It tells me how much. 50 tons of heroin coming into the country. And Remo Williams has got to put a stop to it. So there's that. And then next up was Dr. Quake. Dr. Quake. Richard Saper, Warren Murphy. That's how I have it written down, so I assume that's how it was on the old paperback copies that I read. This one, kind of comic booky. You got a guy that can stop or start earthquakes, and he's got ransom demands, or he's going to quake the hell out of the place. And again, Remo has to put a stop to it. Then we have book number 6, which is book number 7 on my list, Death Therapy. Again, I have Richard Saper and Warren Murphy. And this one, I'm not sure. Oh, some commandos are trying to kill Remo. It seems like maybe people know about the organization, the secret government organization he works for, Cure. So Remo's got to put a stop to it. That's going to be the theme of all of these. Remo's got to put a stop to it. And unfortunately, the descriptions on the back of these copies that I have are not always great. Some of them are incredibly vague and tell me nothing about the actual plot of the book. Next up, Union Bust by, now this one, I only have Warren Murphy written down, even though it has both guys on this cover. I'm assuming on the copy that I read, it only said Warren Murphy, which is why that's all I have written down. Remo versus the Unions. Then we have, make sure I'm doing these in the right order, Summit Chase. This one is even more vague. I have no idea what this one's about. And I have just Warren Murphy, again, on my list, even though it's got both their names here. The back of the book just says, a couple of guys in a hotel lobby waiting for Remo. He comes out of the elevator. They approach him. That's all it tells me. So I don't exactly know what this one's about, because it's been a long time since I read it. I'm going to be rereading all of these. That's why I bought these new editions. Next up, Murder's Shield. I think, and what do I have here? Richard Saper and Warren Murphy again. So I don't know why I have some that just say Warren Murphy. This one, actually, I'm not going to jump ahead and jump straight to this one, but I do want to read this one as soon as possible. Very current, it seems, because it's about a bunch of cops that get together and basically form a murder squad to take out criminals who get away with stuff. Basically, people they know are guilty get out on a technicality or whatever. So they're going around murdering people. This upsets the status quo, meaning the White House, which runs the secret organization Cure, for whom Remo Williams works. But Remo Williams is an ex-cop, so he does not want to go out and kill a bunch of cops that are killing a bunch of criminals, which is what he normally is sent out to do anyway. It'll be interesting to read this in our current political climate. Then we have Terror Squad. And I have Richard Saper and Warren Murphy as the authors. And this one has, I'm just going to look straight on the back. It says, skyjackers, racists, guerrillas, mercenaries, terrorist groups, who basically all come together and form a loose network. So instead of just random racists and random terrorists and random this and random that, they all have this sort of group. And Remo Williams has to take it down, dismantle it, get rid of them. Okay, and then the last one of these is Kill or Cure, which I have Warren Murphy as the author, even though, again, this has both. And this is another one that tells me nothing on the back of the cover, except it seems again that maybe Cure has been exposed and Remo Williams has to fix it. I don't know. These are all these, the series, well, it does say the Destroyer series there. I enjoyed these back in the day. They're just crazy pulp, satirical, I think, action books. And but I recently reread the first one in the series, and I'm not sure, unless you completely look at it as satire, not sure how well they hold up in today's climate. So again, I'm going to be rereading these. We'll see if they're still palatable. All right, so that was a bunch of stuff from the Destroyer series, and we're going to move on to a bunch of stuff from Robert B. Parker. And I started with The God Wolf Manuscript by Robert B. Parker. This is the first Spencer novel. A manuscript is stolen from a college, and Spencer is hired to find it. Not the first Spencer book I read, but the first one in the series. Love these covers. This is the set that I'm trying to get. But anyway, fantastic book. Great introduction to a great character. Then I read, for some reason, I jumped to Valediction, which is like number, I don't know, it's way up there. It's not the next one. And this is the one, so spoilers if you haven't read all the previous books, this is the one after, I'm almost certain, yeah, after his longtime significant other, Susan Silverman, basically breaks up with him, moves across the country, and so Spencer is heartbroken and alone, and he's hired to find a young woman who's basically kidnapped by this religious sect, and he takes the job, but he doesn't really care about anything, so he's doing the job to the best of his ability, but if he gets hurt, if he gets killed, he doesn't care. He's got to get his mojo back, essentially. It's not one of my favorites, but it's still good. It's a Robert B. Parker. It's a Spencer book. So it's still good stuff. And then that was followed by Taming a Seahorse by Robert B. Parker. This is one that I like a lot. This is the second book. Just got to check my notes there. Second book with April Kyle, who was a teenage runaway that in an earlier book Spencer was hired to find, and of course it's all complicated. Spoilers, again, at the end of that book, Spencer basically let April Kyle make the decision to go to work for a high-class madam. Because it was either that or she was going to run away again and just work the streets. So in this book, Taming a Seahorse, the madam calls Spencer, and April Kyle is gone again, and Spencer has to find her, and shenanigans ensue. But I like the April Kyle stories, so it's very good. Then we have Crimson Joy, which again, not one of my favorites. It breaks the mold a little bit. This is about a serial killer that Spencer's trying to find. He and Susan Silverman have gotten back together at this point, and they think maybe this serial killer is one of her patients. She's a psychiatrist or psychologist, one of those. And all of the Spencer books are in first person. This is the first time, I don't know if it's ever been done again, where there are third person chapters that follow the serial killer. We don't know who it is, but instead of the whole thing being told by Spencer, narrated, there are chapters where we're just, we've got that omniscient view of the serial killer, even though we don't know who it is until Spencer knows who it is. Then we have Fletch 1. That's W-O-N by Gregory MacDonald. This is actually a prequel to the original Fletch novel, because Fletch, just Fletch, is the first Fletch book that was written by Gregory MacDonald. There are two, I believe, that take place before it, but were written long after, so they are true prequels. So this is Fletch is a fledgling reporter trying to find his place in journalism. He's supposed to be interviewing some bigwig. That bigwig gets murdered in the newspaper's parking lot, so Fletch is trying to solve the murder. Why not become a crime reporter? Meanwhile, he's also supposed to be writing a story, an expose about a gym that takes very personal care of its members. And he's planning a wedding. So this is a good one. I like this one a lot. It's good stuff. I'm a big fan of Fletch. And you might be able to tell because the next book I read was Fletch by Gregory MacDonald, the original. In this, Fletch is no longer fledgling, straight up reporter, but this rich guy comes to him and basically offers Fletch a ton of money to murder him. Not the rich guy doesn't want to pay Fletch to murder. The rich guy doesn't want to murder Fletch. He wants Fletch to murder him. Right? Makes sense. Anyway, this is the introduction to a great, smart-ass, irreverent character. And I believe my introduction to Gregory MacDonald, not this reading of it, but this particular Fletch was the first Gregory MacDonald I had ever read. Great stuff. Highly recommended. Any of the Fletch books. And then finally, there's been a lot of books. I got two more. So finally, the last two. I know that made it sound like I was to the last one, but it's two more, but they're by the same author. Hoodwink by Bill Pronzini. This is one of the nameless detective books. And I think just, was it last video? Sometime recently, in the last 2 or 3 videos, I had read a Bill Pronzini nameless detective, and I think I said that was the only one I'd read. But I've obviously read some more. In this one, the nameless detective, they just call him Nameless, is invited to a pulp writers convention where a bunch of the writers are being blackmailed. And they want, one writer in particular invites him to figure out who's blackmailing him, and then they find out a bunch of these writers are being blackmailed. So Nameless has to figure out what's going on. And then the last book, finally, in November of 1989, is Nightshades by Bill Pronzini. This is another nameless detective book. And this time, Nameless is hired by an insurance company to go up to Northern California to look into an accident? Something. But it's basically, it's evil land developers versus small town citizens. The land developers want to take the land away and develop it. It's in their name for profit, of course. And so there's all sorts of weird things. They can't do it legally. They don't want to be caught doing it illegally, of course. So Nameless is trying to figure out who's causing these problems, these accidents, these things that are happening. And that's it. That is a lot. That looks like 21 books that I read in November of 1989. But I'll tell you, those Destroyer books, I could read one a night. And the Parkers, the Robert B. Parker, the Spencer books, basically one a night. And don't tell the government, but when you're just sitting in a shack for 8 hours, yeah, I would read. Had to pay a little more attention if I was at the front gate shack, because you actually have to watch the perimeter, watch things. But for the radar, the actual radar building, I was in an office. There were 2 doors. I had a one-way mirror window. I could see into the little trap area, but they couldn't see me. And there was a door from the outside that people could walk in, and then the door to the inside that they could only get through if I buzzed them in. I don't think I had a window to the outside. If I did, it was a little tiny barred window. I can't remember. So it's not like there was much to do except wait for people to come in and then check their ID, make sure they were supposed to be there, they were who they said they were. So again, don't tell, but I did a lot of reading in that room. And like I said, these books, a lot of these could be read in a shift. So even with doing my job. So yeah, 21 books I read in November of 1989 while I was in Iceland. So there you go. That's it for November 1989. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put them in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here on my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you'd care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter is at Ronin5757, and my Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comics, board games, and furry animals, is ErikSmith5757. That's Eric with a K, ErikSmith 5757. That's all I've got, so until next time, read more books.